Today's guest is Tony Burnside, and he's here to burn down the tired myth that you have to be a hard ass to be a successful sales leader. And if you think yelling louder makes you a better manager, Tony's got some news for you, and you're not going to like it. He's all about building real culture, real teamwork, and hiring people who are smart enough to sell, but also confident enough to laugh at themselves. And he knows that every resignation is basically a Yelp review for leadership. And instead of ignoring it, Tony learns from it. He's led teams all across the globe. He spent real money investing in himself, and he believes leadership starts with giving people a damn chance. And if you're managing like it's 1999, this episode might hurt, but in the best way possible. If Tony shook something loose for you, don't keep it to yourself. Jump in on LinkedIn and smash the subscribe button for the Coach2Scale YouTube channel, and let's start building teams that people don't ever want to quit. Let's go. Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Bonelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. Today's guest is living on the other side of the world near Melbourne, Australia, and he's one of the most traveled people I know. He's also a serial mover. He's lived and worked in almost every corner of the world. He's cut his teeth and risen through the ranks in the business with companies such as Aruba Networks and Juniper Networks. Currently, he's Senior Vice President of the Asia Pacific and Japan region for Netskope. Tony Burnside, welcome to Coach2Scale.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for the introduction. And yes, all of that is true, but we are staying put now in Melbourne, Australia.
All right, I'll believe it when I see it. But it sounds like you live in a phenomenal place, and look forward to getting out there and seeing you and Allison someday.
It'll be lovely. Be good to see you.
So Tony, we start this off with a MythBuster question. So I'll throw it right at you. What's a myth in this business of coaching and leading salespeople that you believe's misguided or maybe even complete BS?
Good question. So when I think back to my early days, when I carried a bag being a salesperson before I was manager and leader of any region, I remember some of the people I used to work with or work for, and there seemed to be this perception that as a manager, as a leader, you needed to be a hard ass and just treat people, really pressure people all the time. And I just fundamentally never believed in that accountability, expectation, checks and balances, absolutely, all of those. But you didn't have to be, for want of a better term, a bit of a dick. And we just saw this, and I saw this in many organizations. When I spoke to my peers, they'd be talking about this manager that was just on them all the time, second guessing, questioning. I've just never believed in that. So that's the myth, I believe. And I'll be honest, during my journey as moving into management, there were times people absolutely questioned my approach, because my approach is about great culture, teamwork, mentoring, helping people. My philosophy is good people first, great at what they do second. And I've definitely been questioned on that. But I think time has shown over the last 15 or so years that I've been leading teams in various places around the world, and especially here in the APJ region. We've built an incredible organization of great people, and let them be who they should be and do the job they see fit. Again, checks, balances, KPIs, etc. But I suppose that's the big myth for me, is you can be a good person and lead a great team, and most of all, be successful. And that's what we've proven across APJ.
Okay, so you can be a good person to be and lead a great team and be successful. Here's a question though, because we're actually doing a live session in the next couple of months, and where it's going to be a debate forum where we're going to have one person on each side of debating a topic. And the first topic most likely is going to be, this little teaser here. The first topic is likely to be, can you be friends with your sales reps? Can you be friends with your employees? and we have someone who says yes and we have someone who says no. What do you say to that, just hypothetically?
Not even a difficult question. Absolutely. But they know that we're outside of work, we can be as friendly as we want. And work, we'll be friends. I think it's much easier to get along and do well and work as a team if you like each other. Um, again, accountability. I expect a certain level of, if it's a sales rep, certain level of activity, certain, obviously achievement, quota, all that good stuff. But accountability. So they know that if they're not performing, whether we're friends or not, I'll hold them accountable. And so yes, it's an absolute yes,
All
and
right.
no brainer for me.
And you've mentioned before, and you just mentioned that you're passionate about culture. You're passionate about solid teamwork. Um, how how do you measure culture? So if some, how do you look at your organization and say my culture is solid or my culture needs a lot of work? That's part A, and part B. How's it different with a team, a small team versus a team of a couple of hundred now?
Great question. So for me, I think I touched on it earlier. My hiring philosophy is good people first, great at what they do second, work hard and smart third. And I believe, if we can have a bit of a laugh together, that's the icing on the cake, because we spend as a team so much time together. I'm often doing 12. It can be 12 Zooms a day, 14 Zooms a day if I'm working from home, I'm not traveling. So lots and lots of time together as a team and with our partners, etc. So I think those traits, if they're good people first, everything else is easier. How do I judge it? I think you're right. When there was three of us, five of us, I had huge impact on culture. I still feel I do, but I've got a team of over 200 people across 15 countries. So it's who you hire and how they behave that creates the culture. How I judge that is how my teams get along. It's not always perfect. It never is. But in general, there's just a great teamwork. People are always saying, can I help? How can I help? What do you need? So that's one way I judge it. The other is what the outside believe. And I think there's not a single company in the industry that isn't going to say culture is important. For me, it's absolutely my North Star. It's the number one. We've got great culture. The teamwork is great. Everyone works better together. And that's not just people directly below me. It's how I get on with my marketing peer, my SDR leader, my customer success and support leader, channel, etc. All of us, going back to your question, can you be friends? If we're friends and we get along and we respect and help each other, everything's just better. So how I judge it from the outside is we're on a very, very big hiring at the moment. I'm looking for 19 additional salespeople and peripheral roles as well. So we're on big hiring spree. So I spend a lot of time interviewing people, as do my teams and my leaders. So it's when they come to us, and we've had this situation multiple times in the last few months, where we're interviewing really strong candidates. And they've said to us during the interview process, I was only looking to join one of two companies, and Netskope was one of them, because of what I hear about the culture and the team. That can't be said of many companies. So I suppose that's the way I judge it. And then the last piece is, when I'm interviewing people, I talk about how proud I am of my team and the culture that we've all created. And I typically check in with people, if I can, their first or second day. And I happened to be on holiday when a lady in Sydney was joining. So I called the following week, said, sorry, I couldn't get to you last week. I was traveling. I said, but as per the interview, I wanted to introduce you to three or four people. She goes, Tony, no worries. They all reached out to me last week and I'm having calls or sitting in meetings with them. So that's how I judge good culture, that I didn't have to say anything. So it's the old adage, it's what people do when you're not looking.
That's fantastic. That should have given you the signal. It's another. You can take another week for holiday.
I'm looking forward to the next one.
Tony, would it be fair to say that if you don't have a good culture, people leave?
Absolutely, I believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
100%. Because there's lots of options out there, especially in our industry.
So I read something today. I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. I saw it online somewhere. One of the rare things you actually saw that you can maybe learn something from. It says every resignation is a performance review for leadership. Every resignation is a performance review for senior leadership. What would you say about that? Do they agree with that?
Yes, I probably would. I've never heard it said that way before, but yeah, I probably would. You've got to understand why people are leaving, and we can all learn lessons. I think from everything. So that's another learning opportunity. So yes, I would probably.
Yeah, I thought that was just really insightful, and I recall like when we started this at Oracle years ago when someone left. Well, at first, when people left, we would say, okay, so why did they leave? And HR would come in and they would give you they left for compensation and they left for new opportunities. Yeah, they gave you some data that probably wasn't totally off, but it really wasn't helpful. So
Yeah.
what we instituted was when anyone left, the VP, myself or one of the VPs that worked for me would do their best. They couldn't always get it, but would do their best to interview, like an exit interview, that person to
Yep.
really get like the stuff that they wouldn't tell HR, that they wouldn't fill out online, that didn't fit into a drop down box. But like, what's the real reason that you're leaving? And I found that we learned a lot more when we dug into that. And if you really look at it as a performance review and try to get better from it. But I saw that today and I thought that was pretty insightful.
And the lesson you learned was to have, like say, a VP or a leader as opposed to just leaving it to HR, which is quite often the norm. That was the change you made, yeah.
Yeah, that was the change that we made. I mean, it was extra work, but
Mm.
I think it did a couple things. One is we got deeper information. I think we got the more real information, and I think it showed to everybody else that we actually care,
Absolutely.
and so that we could you say with certainty, hey, I spoke to the last few people that left the organization and I'm starting to see a pattern on something here that we need to change. That pattern might
Yeah.
be, Jack or Jill manager wasn't good and that we needed to look into that, or some other business practice that we were all fond of wasn't a good way to go and we need to rescind that or modify it in some way. But
Yep.
again, it's just
That's.
about being close to the business.
I like that. I think there's a lot of truth in that, and that makes a lot of sense.
So Tony, you talked about hiring traits, and if I wrote them down correctly, and I'm paraphrasing here, but hire great human beings that are great at what they do. They work hard and smart, and that can laugh, right? That can let their hair down and have a good
Yep.
time. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. That's absolutely my hiring philosophy.
It is if you had to pick one that's more important than the other three, which one would you say?
It, it,
And
it it starts with a good human, a good person. So, I've been in organizations, and when I think back to some of the various companies I've worked at, I've looked around the room when we have a sales meeting, an incredible amount of egos, and some people that I didn't particularly care for. They were very self-centered and worried about themselves. And I looked around, but they're successful. So there's a place for those, just not particularly in my organization. So it's people that want to do well, but don't want to succeed at the detriment of others. And I think that's where the good human comes in. But you've got to have the other face. You've got to have hardworking, know what they're doing, professional. All of those that goes without saying. But for me, it's that good human. And then you've got to work hard and smart. You've got to we're not a holiday camp. This is somewhere come, amazing opportunity, but I expect full commitment as well.
and the laugh or and have a good time. How do you discern that in an interview?
That's a really hard one. It really is. So quite often, it's the initial banter at the beginning, the initial conversation. Do I in the first 5 minutes of any interview? I'm not asking questions about their career. We're just hopefully getting to know each other a little bit. It's not easy. It's not easy, but you get a feeling. So since COVID, we will not hire anyone unless multiple people have met them in person.
Mm.
During COVID times, a lot of people can interview really, really well, especially over a screen. So we like many of my peers made some mistakes along the way. People were incredible interviewers, but did they have the other traits? Did they work hard and smart? Did they have the contacts? So it's really that it's a tough one, but it's that conversation at the beginning, and is this someone I think that I'd enjoy being around? But yeah, not easy.
Yeah, one of the Sandler rules for managers was don't get smoked in the interview, because after all, you're interviewing salespeople, right? If they can't sell you on the interview, they certainly can't sell Netskope, right? You
Exactly.
can't. Um,
So true.
but
So
you
true.
travel a lot into different theaters, around the world, and now, certainly within APJ. Um, you shared with me before the litmus test of, like, do you really want to hire this person? Can you laugh, so I think you know what I'm talking about. Can you expand on
Yeah,
your litmus test there?
absolutely. So, when I think about the mentors I've had and leaders I've had that I truly respected, there's many of them, but my last VP of sales, who's now retired, I miss him very much, Chris. He used to use the litmus test, was if he was going to fly into a city sort of unannounced. So, say he had something come up, and his litmus test as to was, would he call those individuals in that city to say, I'm in town, let's go for a drink or a coffee or breakfast or whatever. And in many cities, obviously he had multiple people he would call. There was others that it's like, no, I'm okay. That was his test of whether he thought. And again, I'm a big believer in this. If I want to hang out with people, if I enjoy their company, hopefully our partners do, our customers do, our alliance partners do, our prospects do. So again, people. I'm a big believer. I'm old school. People buy from people. People want to hang around with people that actually enjoy their company as well. It's not all just business.
Well, if you're ever traveled to Sanibel, Florida, Southwest Florida, or Park City, would you look me out?
I'm on the spot here, man. Yeah, of course.
Well, all I can say is when I was in Sydney, and when I was in your general area, I
You
reached
did.
out. So yeah.
You did, and I enjoyed it very much. So it's a strong yes.
Tony, I mentioned in the intro, you've worked in a lot of different places. You've lived in a lot of different places. You've also done a lot of different roles. If I remember correctly, you started as an SE on the
Correct.
technical side. Is that right? Yeah. So, um, what do you say to the leader who thinks that people can't, most people can't make that jump?
Absolutely. So actually, if I go back very slightly, my first job was on the vendor side, was an SE. Prior to that, I was a network engineer and end user. That's how I got into the vendor side. So really started before
Technical.
that. So yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'm a big believer in if you've got the right person, the right attitude and aptitude and desire. I'm a big believer in promoting from within. We've promoted in the last few months of 5 or 6 people from within our organization, some to manager, but others to different roles within the organization. We've got one young lady that during COVID, she got made redundant from a company here in Australia. Didn't have really any sales, a little bit of sales, but no cyber experience whatsoever. But we interviewed her. Great attitude, absolutely had the aptitude to learn and desire to grow. So we hired her as an SDR. She did an incredible job there, because I'm always a big believer. I can only judge you on the job you're doing at the moment, even if you think you can do something else. But she got into the SDR job, crushed it. She then became an account executive. She's been doing that the last 2 years. And as of April 1st, we've promoted her into, she had the desire to move into a channel role. And we've now moved her into a channel role, and literally within days, she was presenting some channel stuff to the entire 200 of us on our weekly team call. So there's an example of someone that we saw the attitude, right attitude, and she could obviously learn, and she's just grown through the ranks. We promoted an SE recently in Sydney to a major account manager, and there was some concern, but again, his manager and myself just saw in him, we absolutely felt he could crush it. And he's absolutely is 6 months in and just 7 months in, and he's one of our top performing salespeople. So I'm a big believer in giving people a chance. And I also think if people, if you're giving someone a chance, so another example is I've relocated 7 or 8 people globally into our organization, some of which worked for Netskope before and or came from another role in Netskope in another country, others that were new into the company, and not one of them has failed. And some of that is because they will not fail because we've given an opportunity they only dreamed of. Much like when I first had the opportunity to move abroad from the UK to the US, I'd run through a brick wall for my manager because he one was a great person and he changed my life. He gave me an opportunity when others had initially said, "Nah, you don't have contacts in Boston." This guy said, "But I bet you can make them." That
Yeah.
answer the question, Matt?
Yeah, and then some, which is fantastic. I want to ask you a few questions about working and leading people in what I'll call other parts of the world. Like, so, the majority of the audience here, Tony, is US based, right?
Yep.
Or at least North America based. So, how different is it? And for context, for the audience, Tony has worked in the UK, in Boston, and now in APJ and out of Australia. So the question's coming from your knowledge of the States and of Boston. How difficult? How not difficult? How different is it leading teams and managing people, leading people in the States versus the UK versus APAC?
Great question. So I put it sort of into 2 buckets. So for me, UK, US, Australia, not a ton of difference, little nuances, but not a huge amount. Obviously, language for the most part, the culture. So not really seeing a big difference. When I first came to Australia, there was definitely as a country, Australia, New Zealand. Little bit, I won't say laggards, but a little bit behind in embracing new technology. So that was one difference. But managing people across there, I think it's very similar. It's when you go into Asia, Southeast Asia, North Asia. So we initially went into Singapore, then into India, then into Japan. And you have to be cognizant of the differences in culture, the way people work, and be respectful of that, and not expect you can treat someone or demand someone or expect someone in Singapore or India or Japan to respond in the same way. So, as an example, in many Asian countries, the team will do exactly what you want, and so or what you ask them to. And in some instances, it can be quite frustrating because, like, but why didn't you do that as well? And the response was that you didn't ask me to do that. And so, whereas over here, it might be more someone was thinking that, well, I've done these things and I'll take it to the next step. That's just a cultural thing. So it's about you need a lot more management, a lot more hands-on management in many of those Asian countries than you do in here, in Australia or the US or the UK. Japan is a completely different country and culture as well. Incredibly wonderful people, the most polite nation you could imagine, but very conservative. So I'm, where the way the sales team forecast is very different. It's, we can have a deal that goes from almost pipeline to commit and close 2 weeks later. And it's like, but what happened? Why didn't that move through the funnel in the right way? It's because they didn't want to commit because they didn't want to disappoint me if it didn't come in. So those are the differences. And I depend hugely when I first came over here. So I arrived 10 years ago with no experience in the region. And again, that comes back to a boss that was willing to take a chance on me. So I depend a huge amount on my network of peers, people that have been doing this before. And what did they do right? What would they do differently again? And that's one thing I must say that is just blew me away when I came to Australia is the willingness for people to want to help you was just next level. And if a friend of a friend contacted someone, I didn't have to contact them; they'd contact me and say, John gave me your name. I hear you just arrived. Anything I can do to help? So that's the difference. You be aware and do your research as well.
Really, really interesting. So I'm going to paraphrase, but I'm hearing you say that an ambitious, talented young person, um, professional, could move from somewhere in North America and go to Australia and be successful as a sales rep. They could also go into the different Asian countries and be, assuming they could speak the language, like they could be successful as long as they took the time to understand the customs and the different ways business is done and people interact in that area. I mean, people are people. Would that be fair?
I'd say that's somewhat true. So just to give you an example, so absolutely, someone landing here in Australia, Singapore. Like I said, I've relocated multiple people here. We've relocated people to Singapore. Those countries, absolutely. You move into places like the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, much harder because it's definitely and that's why any vendor like yourself has a huge dependence on local distributors and local resellers. So I'd say it's somewhat true. There's certain countries that you'd be able to do that. In the Middle East, Dubai would be another great example of you can fly in there and relocate from the US, the UK, Australia, no issues whatsoever.
They're
But
global
it depends
cities.
on the
They're
country.
global
Exactly.
cities versus closed society, like closed cities, really.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, but that can't be said the same across the whole of Asia. As say, I operate in 12 or 13 countries across Asia. I'd say there's a couple of those that you could effectively land and be effective. Here in Australia, absolutely. We literally just relocated one of our channel managers from London to Sydney. He landed at 10 o'clock. He was pretty much in meetings by 1 o'clock in the afternoon and being effective. So depends
There
on the
you go.
country.
Yeah, hit the ground running, as they say.
It was great.
Uh,
It was great.
so, Tony, what's a lesson learned, like a tough lesson learned, a painful lesson, and that you learned somewhere along the line in this business that really gave you that aha moment to look at things or maybe approach things differently and learn from it?
I'll give you a couple of examples. The first one for me was probably had the most profound effect on my career. I was, as you mentioned earlier, I was a systems engineer out of Marlborough, Massachusetts, for a company called Crosscom, and I was an SE, and I worked with a sales guy that I didn't think was as good as he should be, and didn't work as hard as he could or I felt he needed to. So anyway, he ended up leaving the company, and I got the opportunity to put my hand up for a sales role. And I said, look, I'd like to do it. And again, a manager said, I'll give you a chance, but if it doesn't work out in 6 months, let's agree to part ways, and you go back to an SE. So I said, no problem. I'll give it a go. So I moved into a sales role, and very naive as an SE, I thought it was easy. The phone would ring, and back then the fax machine would just print orders. Obviously, learned the hard way that was not the case, so had to do my own business development. We didn't have SDRs back then, so started doing that sort of stuff. And I had a manager, a lady called Bernadette Alfonso, out of New Jersey, and she was in the office next door one day listening to me. And she let me run for a little bit and then came in the office and said, Tony, what on earth is going on? I said, what do you mean? And she goes, I'm listening to you. That's not the Tony I gave the opportunity to have to do this role. She goes, I hired you because of who you are, how you talk, how you behave. And so that was the first one. And it was be yourself. Don't try and be something different because it won't work. And so that probably was the most profound lesson I learned from a manager to say, yeah, I thought I needed to be different to be a sales guy. Maybe it was some of the people I'd seen behave, but that wasn't why she hired me. So that's why I'm very passionate about when you hire someone, you hired them for a reason. Let them be them and be successful. So that was number one. In this part of the world, the biggest lesson I learned was, you've really got to do your research in the countries, going back to cultures and the way they view leading stroke bleeding edge technology. If I go back 12 years when Netskope started and almost 10 when we came over here, very much a startup. We had no customers in the region. And I'd hire someone in Singapore and expect them to cover 5 countries if we got a lead in. That just means you do a lot of things not well. So that was the other lesson I learned is really research and plan. And if you commit to any country, you've got to fully commit. You can't do something, flying in and out once a quarter. Doesn't work, and you're ineffective.
Yeah, yeah. You don't build the trust. There's a
So,
whole bunch of things that come in. Totally makes sense. And is there a common theme that you've seen in the folks who are able to transition to, let's say, leading a team in one geography to leading a team in the other? Is it doing the research? Is it understanding, or is there something deeper than that you've noticed?
um, that's a really good question. I suppose it's just like I say, going back to that. Can you see the attitude and aptitude? Can you see that this person wants to learn and they can learn? And everyone, as say, we've given them an opportunity that other companies or other people might not have given them. So they just really have lent in and said, "I'm not going to fail at this. You've given me an opportunity. You took a chance on me. I'm going to prove you made a good choice." So I think it's that determination. They're just determined to make a success of this new role that they wanted to get into, and we gave them the opportunity. We've hired people, and I'm sure many of the listeners would have been through this as well. We've hired many people that joined us because they hit that glass ceiling at another company. We had one young lady in Melbourne that she was told by a prior company, "No, you're too young to have this next role." She'd proved herself, she'd delivered, she had the experience, but they just had this artificial um, restriction that she couldn't go. She came to us and absolutely nailed it. We gave her the opportunity. Um, Another young man who's now a very very successful sales leader in Sydney, young guy called Nathan. When he joined us 7 years ago, he other companies pigeonholed him, said you can only be a mid-market or commercial salesperson. I saw just there was no reason he couldn't be an enterprise salesperson. He came in, sold into, as we call over here, the top end of town, and absolutely crushed it. He was our number one salesperson 2.5, 3 years later. So
Hmm. Yeah, it's great when people get opportunities. They take it seriously. They don't want to fail. They don't want to let you down, and they certainly get after it. Um,
absolutely,
and we met. I don't know, man. At this point,
long time, mate.
15 plus years ago, I think
Yep.
around that time. And I remember a story that you told me that long ago. And the gist of it was how you took the time to become a professional salesperson and invest in yourself, right? To learn as much as you can, to read, to just be a sponge for knowledge. And actually, you took some significant capital out of your own wallet
Mm.
and invested it. Can you talk about the importance of investing in yourself?
100%. So I pride myself on hopefully learning from a lot of smart people around me, but nothing substituted the two times I invested significant money. My wife at the time wasn't convinced it was a good use of the money. We could have gone on a very nice holiday. But yeah, the first was the Dale Carnegie course, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was probably nearly 20 years ago now. Incredible course for me. Again, I was just moving from SE into sales, and so really just that was the foundation for me of changing my career. But the course that absolutely probably had the most profound effect from a sales perspective and brought me success was the Sandler session I did in Boston about 11, 12 years ago. So I was a long way into my career. I wasn't a youngster then, but still felt I had a lot more to learn. And I don't believe it was an accident that shortly after, about 6 months after I finished that course, I closed the biggest deal of my career. At the time, it was $3.5 million US. I'd never worked deals like that before. So those two courses absolutely changed my life. It was investment I made. My company at the time weren't going to do that, but spoke to a few people, and again, it's doing your research. I spoke to a few people that had been through it, and they also said, best thing I ever did. money well spent. And I think it was a lot of money at the time, and,
Yeah.
but it changed my career and it's paid me back in spades. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, commissions on a $3 million deal back at
Okay.
that time. Probably, yeah, paid for that
I paid for
and the
the call,
holiday.
Samsung. Yeah,
Yeah, and the
exactly.
holiday.
Yeah,
The
yeah. I can't emphasize the importance enough investing in yourself, as you say.
so, um, is there? So think about that, right? So for you, that years ago, it was Dale Carnegie, it was the Sandler training, sales methodology. That's what got you started back then. If you're gonna give advice, general advice, not it doesn't have to be names of trainings, but um, the type of training, the type of information that you think many people should invest in, not like one specific person, but just these days, what is one area that you think a lot of salespeople would benefit from investing in themselves to, or sales people or sales leaders? If one thing that you'd suggest that they invest in themselves to learn about.
That's a really, really good question. Obviously, there's just so many options. We're flooded with information and trainings and learnings about everything. Again, I'm old school. I think anything that you can learn practical. So going back to I really the Sandler for me was really beneficial just because it was practical stuff that I could implement literally the next day after I learned something in my next meeting, how I'd run a meeting, some of those basics. So, and when I look at many of our salespeople, I'll sometimes go out to meetings with them and it feels like they're really good at what they do, but they don't do the basics, which is, at the beginning of the meeting, understanding has anyone got to leave early? This is what we're planning to present, walk you through. At the end, we're going to leave a few minutes to next steps. They don't do any of that, and I
Yeah.
sometimes see the meeting suddenly finishes and we haven't got next steps. We haven't. So I'm a big basics guy, and we can learn. We've got to learn about all the latest technology, obviously AI, quantum in the future. We've got to understand that as cyber professionals. But it's
Yeah.
basics to me. So I think any type of training that and we you need to put it into practice and tweak it and adapt it for yourself. It's anything. It's basics for me. That's what I big believer in.
Yeah. Yeah, well, certainly changed my life. Also, and can talk about it up and down. So, Tony, you've been at Netskope, I don't know, over 10 years now, to almost 11 years, I think. What do you love about? Well, first of all, for the audience, what does Netskope do? For those who don't know, and what do you love about what you're doing today?
Excellent question. So yes, I am in my 11th year. October 14th will be 11 years this year. We're a cloud security vendor. So as Gartner coins it, Security Service Edge or SSE or Secure Access Services SASE. So think of us, we sit between users, no matter where they're going on the internet, protecting them, but also protecting data wherever it may reside, whether it's on a website, whether it's on a SaaS application, private application. Very proud that we're the absolutely furthest to the right and the top in Gartner Magic Quadrant for SSE. So been there multiple years. So very proud of that. What do I find exciting is just continuing to grow the organization. As I say, when we started, there was two of us in Melbourne. My team is now over 200 people on the go-to-market team across the whole of APJ. Very, very fast growing region. What keeps me excited is we literally don't know what's around the corner in our space. If we go back to November 22, most of us have never heard of ChatGPT. Now it's an integral part of all of our lives and business. And we have a big part in protecting those environments. So you just don't know what's around the corner. So that keeps exciting. It's ever changing. When I started Netskope, we really have one product. We're now a platform that has 12 or 13 modules. So that's exciting. But for me, again, it comes back to what I said earlier. It's that culture. It's that building that team. I'm really proud of our team. So we've implemented we were the first in the world at Netskope to implement an internship program where we're taking young people, and primarily engineers, out of universities, some cases their first job. In other cases, one of our best engineers in Australia was a young man that had finished a computer degree at uni, and he spent 5 years at McDonald's moving into a manager role, decided he wanted to get back in cyber. We gave him a chance. He's absolutely one of our best young salespeople, engineers in the organization. Another young girl, her first job out of Deakin University in Melbourne. And again, she's one of our best engineers. So that I still get excited about, seeing young people, their career blossom, and hopefully I've played a little part in that. And you know, it works both ways. It means we're bringing people through the industry. We're getting great talent, but we're giving them an opportunity that they might have not otherwise had. So those are the things that excite me. And winning, obviously, we win more than our fair share of deals we go into, and that I still love the thrill of the sale, working with customers, interacting with prospects and partners. So yeah, I feel very fortunate to be where I am, both geographically, but also in the business. Yeah, I love the differences of working with people from Singapore, Japan, India. I love going to see my India team. They're just wonderful, wonderful human beings, and I love the food. So
Same.
all good.
I cherish. I think I've been to India probably a dozen times, and every single one of them was a fantastic trip. Long way to go, but people were great, and I love the food too.
Exactly.
But after a week of that, Tony, after a week of Indian food, you need a salad, right? Like
Absolutely,
it's
mate. I couldn't agree more. I thrive, just waiting for broccoli, and like you say, a salad. Yeah.
So Tony, we're the Coach2Scale podcast. We want to our listeners are people who want to get better at their job of leading salespeople for the go to market organizations, and we want to bring on guests that have been there, done that, have had success, stubbed their toe a little bit, and can share perspective of success, but also failure. In people who care about leading and coaching and developing, some people like yourself usually had that behavior modeled for them somewhere along the way. Who is somebody in your life whose coaching has had an impact on who you are and what you do today?
So there's many I could mention, but there's two that really spring to mind. One is a former CEO. That was the first CEO I worked for that I really got to know well. His name is Dominic Orr. He was CEO back in many years ago of Altion Web Systems, where I first went to work as a salesperson, and then he was later CEO and chairman of Aruba Networks. So he, from the beginning, taught me humility. And again, going back to no egos. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, sorry, my screen's gone. So
So
he
Tony, let's start that. Let's start that over. Just
something popped up on my screen and you disappeared. I thought I'd been disconnected.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
okay. So you remember I can.
Yep.
If you remember the question, just okay, go.
Okay, there's really two individuals that I could name many people that have had a positive impact on my career and I learned from, but there's two individuals that really stand out. One is a former CEO. It was the first CEO I really got to know well, an organisation. His name is Dominic Orr. He was the CEO and founder of Altion Web Systems back in the load balancing.com boom days, and he taught me about humility and that you can be a great leader. But you can be humble as well. And I think I've always prided myself on being very humble. Humility is a really important trait, I believe, for leaders. The second is a VP of sales called Lou Serlenga. And it was interesting how I got to work for him because I was already at a company at Aruba. And I interviewed him to be my manager. I was sort of pseudo helping run the region, but I wanted to stay a salesperson. So he came in and he just taught me again, he was humble, but he had, it was about metrics as well, that not too far, but he held people accountable. So he showed me that you can be the balance of going back to, can you be a friend? He's become a friend. He's still a friend today. even though we don't work together. I catch up with him once a quarter just to see how we're doing. So you can become a friend, you can be humble, but you can be a very, very effective leader. And I used the term earlier and I'll use it again. For many of those leaders that have had those traits that I respond very well to, I literally would run through a brick wall for them. And, if they called me up, said, Tony, I need you, said, what do you need, Lou? And before here, my prior VP, Chris Andrews, I'd worked with him for 10 years. So again, I'd run through a brick wall if I'm treated well with respect. So those are the two that really have had probably the most profound effect. But I'm learning all the time. Like on Chief Revenue Officer, absolutely learning from him every day. So we're never too old to learn, even though I'm old.
I won't touch that one. Last question, Tony. Who's your favorite coach? So I'm thinking this is like a celebrity, like a name that many people would know. Who's your favorite coach or leader, and what attribute about that person do you respect?
That's a good question. For me, I'm sure many of us read Jocko's books and look at what he's achieved, and I think for me it's just that never say die attitude. Just when you're backed into a corner, find a way to get out of it and succeed. So that's one for me. I think that's not just about sales, that's about life. And I think so much in a sales or leadership position, it's not just about our industry, it's about life skills. And I think those are really, really important. So I don't tend to focus a ton on, sales leaders. It's more just, going back, it's a theme. You've heard me say it many times. It's good people, but with those attributes that are just, they're going to succeed within reason no matter what. And I'm a big believer. I want to succeed no matter what, but not at the expense of other people. So I suppose that's one that springs to mind as just an incredible individual that's achieved some incredible things in his life and continues to do so.
And by the way, is he like the perfect, like he's not a central casting for like what, like he scares you just looking at you. He looks through you, right? I mean, imagine fighting that. That guy's like a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
And I am nothing like that, but
I know
nothing like it. But
he looks
you can't help
it, which is awesome. He can play himself in the movie. Phenomenal.
Exactly.
So, Tony, I think that's a really good place to leave it. We've covered a lot of ground. We talked about the importance of humility, sticking to the basics, investing in yourself, hiring people that are good human beings that can also laugh, at themselves in the situation. We talked about how where people are the same all over the world, but some parts of the world are different, and you have to figure out how to assimilate and gain trust. So a lot of ground. I really appreciate all the energy and perspective that you brought to the conversation today.
Thank you. I really appreciate taking the time, and always a pleasure, Matt. And make sure when you come to Sydney, you call me, and I will definitely call you if I'm in Boston or Park City.
Well, it's a little bit kind of, I guess, foreigner to assume that because I'm in Sydney that you should come and see me, right? Because that's like going to Washington, D.C. and you're in Boston and thinking you're going to come down, right? It's, or
that's
or
a good
Boston
point. I've not thought
right?
about that. Yeah.
So,
well, the difference is, though, that people literally do commute pretty much between Melbourne and Sydney. It's the most travelled flight route on the globe.
Really?
There's flights by multiple airlines every 15 minutes between those two cities. So for me, it's almost like just driving into Melbourne. I don't, like you say, I don't even think about it. It's like, Sydney, of course I'll come there. I've not thought of it that way. It's because Australia is just so damn big.
I'll come to Melbourne next time. All right.
There you go. Sounds good, mate.
Food capital of the world.
Absolutely.
So, Tony, thanks again. And for everybody out there, thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Hope you really enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. If you like it, let us know you're out there on social media. Hit that like button on LinkedIn. But more importantly, engage in the conversation. Comment. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you took away. Let us know what you don't like. And also, let us know what you'd like to see and hear more of. We want to bring content and we want to bring guests to you that help you do that hard job that you do every day. We want to make it a little bit easier. So good luck out there. And until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.